Welcome to week 7 of the front office episode for Free Tendies Fantasy. I'm Ted. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up? What's up?
Little late upload for you guys this week. This should be going up on Wednesday night, or no, Tuesday night. So for those of you in leagues that have waivers roll on Wednesday at 12, you have an hour to watch this. For all 5 of you that are in leagues where waivers are on Thursday, you're in luck. You'll have plenty of time to get our nuggets of information. But let's get into it. All right, so free agent pickups for this week. Jordan Mason is my first one. He has a 16 carry for 96 yards and 2 touchdown stat line in the last 2 weeks. Christian McCaffrey is expected to miss at least one game. I've seen reports today that he may play on Monday. Don't believe it. Don't buy it. There's no reason for Shanahan to rush him back. And so far, he's been more effective than Elijah Mitchell. Right now, it seems like the Niners came into the season with CMC as the 1 on the depth chart, Mitchell is the 2, and Jordan Mason is the 3. In the limited work that Niners backup running backs have had, it's very, very clear Jordan Mason is the better guy out of the 2. And Shanahan doesn't really play around. He's not going to honor the depth chart too much on this one, I don't believe. So, especially in leagues where there might be a manager that already has Elijah Mitchell as a handcuff, you might be able to sneak this one. You might be able to get a sneaky Jordan Mason play and get the real backup for the Niners for next week, at least 1 week. I heard the initial diagnosis was like 2 to 4. Isn't that right, Yanni? For whatever injury
It's
CMC has.
gone back and forth. So, there was a report that it might be multiple games. Then it looked like it got a lot better. Now it's just a pain tolerance issue. I would expect at least one game. And then, depending on how they look, I would expect them to think hard about 2 games, honestly. The Niners aren't playing for wins in October. So I don't see why they would rush him back. But they're also very weird about, they treat every game like it's a playoff game. So reports range from 2 to 4 weeks. Now they're saying he might go Monday. I don't see any way he goes Monday, and I wouldn't be surprised if he misses next week too.
Yeah. And just going forward, he should be the handcuff for CMC anyways, right? So
Yeah,
we're,
yeah,
we're getting to the point in the season where I'd drop some fab on it. I wouldn't break your bank for Jordan Mason, but maybe a little sprinkle to make sure, just in case somebody else doesn't already have a claim on him as well.
yeah.
Next one, Michael Mayer, tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's a rookie. His stats in the last 2 weeks: 9 targets, 7 catches, 114 yards. He's clearly getting usage. The Raiders hate throwing to Devontae, and especially when Jimmy's in the game. Like we've said this about Jimmy all year, and we'll continue to say so. He has a terrible deep ball. He's going to be looking for short to intermediate routes and a safety blanket like a tight end who can actually catch the ball and be effective like Michael Mayer is probably somebody whose star is rising in that offense rather than falling. So especially I believe we have like 6 or 7 teams on bye this week. So if you're a team that has maybe a tight end on bye, Michael Mayer could be an interesting pickup for you. And then the last one is Jarrett Stidham, backup quarterback for the Broncos. This Broncos team has been terrible. I personally really liked their over this year. I thought that Sean Payton would help kind of improve the team past where they were last year, and I thought that Russ was in line for a rebound year. It just seems like it's not going to be it for them, and the Broncos are getting close to giving up. They're fielding calls for Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. They're really selling the farm and looking towards next year in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. So as of right now, Russ's contract, the way it's drawn up, is that if he's injured by March of next year, that his money is guaranteed for the next year. So with the Broncos just at this point tanking and them being on the hook if Russ gets hurt, I wouldn't be surprised to see Russ get pulled pretty soon, just to let Jarrett Stidham get some snaps and make sure that Russ can't fuck the team over next year financially. So that's pretty much it for that one. The Broncos' offense has been okay. there's been a couple weeks. I think that for the first 3 weeks of the season, Russ was the fantasy quarterback 3. Like there's been some production there, so I think there's something to Sean Payton's play calling. Like this is not a quarterback 1 by any means, but he could be like a sneaky little play as a free agent, especially if you have a quarterback that's hurt or injured or whatever.
Okay, so for my free agent ads this week, I have Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a guy that me and Ted always have split feelings on or whatever. I'm actually a fan of the kid. I think he's talented, and I think he looks like he's been ramping up for the last few weeks. To me, he looks like their best receiver, and especially in PPR leagues, he's getting enough work that I think you want to take a look at the kid. There's also a lot of premium wide receivers on bye this week. I actually have a league where I have to stream him because I have Higgins and CD on bye, and I think Hopkins as well. So 25 targets the last month. His best line of the year came last week with an 8 targets, 8 catches, 62 yards. The thing with the Giants in general is, one, they do not have talented wide receivers, or at least no one that's broken out. I mean, Slayton's all right, but it looks to me that Wan'Dale Robinson is the best guy in that team. They're in constant negative game scripts. They will be throwing the ball the whole time they're playing the game for the most part. Their defense is trash. So again, especially in PPR, I would be looking to add Wan'Dale Robinson to your roster. Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz was a guy that if I punted on tight end this year, I was grabbing round 11, 12, 13 because I really like the talent. And also the 49ers offensive scheme, or the Shanahan scheme, whatever you want to call it, that scheme that is in Houston, it features tight ends. That is a facet of that offense. And Dalton Schultz, the last 3 weeks, has 20 targets, 14 receptions, 168 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He has been, I want to say, the tight end 2 or 3 during that time period. I think Kelsey probably edged him. I didn't actually go check that. I probably should have. But totaling 41.8 half PPR points during the last 3 weeks. I noticed that he was on waivers in a lot of my leagues last week. If he is, he absolutely should not be. I don't know if it's the name. I don't know if it's the team that he's on, but you probably want to be going to get him if he is. Just check if he is. I figure that's a little bit of a long shot, but I did notice in 2 out of 7 of my leagues he was on waivers, so I thought that was wild. And then Craig Reynolds of Detroit. He has 19 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown the last 2 games. This is more of a matter of the volume is going to be there. The offensive line, the system's really good, and Gibbs and Montgomery are hurt. Montgomery, it sounds like a rib cartilage issue. So that could be 2 to 3 weeks if they don't put him on IR, but they said he's going to miss some time. So normally that's not a week, and they didn't put him on IR, so you can assume 2 to 3 weeks. Gibbs has missed 2 weeks. And Gibbs has actually looked like he's had a little bit of trouble adjusting to that in between the tackles scheme that Detroit wants to do. It's kind of interesting. It's like a weird fit that's going on between him and the team right now. I would expect him to get it going, but the fact that both the guys are ahead of him are injured, and that the guy that's been getting the main reps on that offense has been a running back 1 really for 2 years running now. I think you probably have to add Craig Reynolds on rosters where you can. I don't know if I would burn like a top 3 waiver priority on him, and I probably wouldn't spend like even more than $5 at Fab on him, but I do think he's someone you want to be taking a look at. I didn't really have a lot for sells this week. It was such a funky week offensively, and nothing really jumped out to me. Brian Robinson Jr., just because he has composed a good enough week this week and good enough production this year, it looks to me like Gibson is both more talented, more effective, and eating into his workload a little bit. Also, Sam Howell's becoming much more competent as a passer. It just in general feels like that super volume that he was getting the first 3 weeks that buoyed him into being a very viable fantasy running back. I want to say he was certainly top 10. I forget where exactly in the top 10 he was over the first month, but he was really exploding. It seems like a lot of that's gone. I would probably look at, packaging him with someone who you could get for him. Running back is very thin this year, and his numbers look good enough that I think you could probably get some premium draft cap or trade capital back for him. It's risky, but if I could swap Brian Robinson for like Aaron Jones, I would do that all day. And then Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is currently the wide receiver 3 in fantasy this year. He is getting an obscene amount of volume on a team with a bad defense. So a bad performing defense. They're not a bad defense. But they're airing the ball out, and it is absurd the degree to which he's getting fed. I feel like this is in no way sustainable. I would be shocked if it is. He's been battling injuries as he's gotten older. That level of volume, I would be shocked if he doesn't miss some time before the end of the year. But also more so, he has real trade value at the moment. I have seen him being traded for like real assets, real the high value stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if you could package him with someone and get like a Devonte Adams. I would not be surprised if he has real market value. I would be poking around with your teams. I would see what you could get for him. This is probably the highest his value will be all season. I don't see him keeping it up.
All right, my cells. It's time to have our weekly Raheem Mostert talk, everyone. It's our favorite thing to do on this show. Jeff Wilson is coming back this week. In public perception right now of Raheem Mostert is that he's been like the league winner of the year. There's a very good chance that if you do have Raheem Mostert, you probably started off the year pretty well. I believe last week in the head coach episode, we predicted a 40-point performance for him last week. He only scored 30 against the Panthers. But yeah, this is the deal, though. Like, he's going to be in a three-way time split. When A-Chain comes back, A-Chain is clearly the better running back than Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert is in his 30s. There's no way this is sustainable. And he will be the guy who gets you into the fantasy playoffs, and then you'll lose because you're starting him in the fantasy playoffs because there's too many mouths to feed. Since everybody just thinks that Raheem Mostert is the league winner this year, you could probably get something crazy for him. Like, say, for example, Jamar Chase, maybe even. Or maybe even Kirk Cousins and Jamar Chase. That'd be pretty crazy. DJ Moore is our next one. Justin Fields is hurt. I believe he dislocated his thumb on Sunday against the Vikings, and he still might not be very good at football. We're still figuring that out, really. He started off the year terribly. Then he had 2 really good weeks against the Commanders and the Broncos, and then he hurt himself. So jury's still out on him. DJ Moore is very reliant on huge chunk plays on a very bad team. So when you're down big like the Bears have been, that's a pretty good shout, right? If you're going to be throwing all the time, there's a pretty good chance that he has been breaking stuff off. But especially if Fields is hurt and that thumb, like even if he's back, like a dislocated thumb might bother you on your throwing hand, might bother you. So I would say that you might be able to take advantage of his couple of big weeks to land a more consistent or better asset. And just kind of move off of him. I don't know what you could get for DJ Moore. Maybe I've seen a lot of like guys that were really stoked on a Justin Fields DJ Moore stack. So maybe like if you go to the Justin Fields owner, maybe you can get something from them. I don't know. I would take Raheem Mostert over DJ Moore. I would take Ken Walker over DJ Moore. I would take Jalen Waddle over DJ Moore. I would take Devontae Smith over DJ Moore. But yeah, just see what you could get for DJ, especially if like you're not really bought in on Fields as a passer.
Okay, my buys. I do feel like there are a lot more buys than sells right now. I don't know if that's because of the weird offensive output. I don't know. Basically, I feel like a lot of what we have been seeing in fantasy has not matched what you would expect. So I feel like there are some opportunities to get in and buy. My first buy is actually Debo. Debo has had a pretty rough couple of weeks here, 3 weeks, I think, 2-3 weeks. However, he showed he was super productive, right? If one piece of that offense goes, Debo generally is the one who carries the team. And with Christian being injured, I would expect him to be getting carries. And even just with Christian being injured in general moving forward, even if he's in the games, I would expect him to start to mix in Debo out of the backfield a little more to relieve some of that load. I think this is kind of the first crack in the armor you're seeing for CMC, right? There's always a conversation. When's he going to get hurt? When's it going to go down? Blah, 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 right? And I think Shanahan has to be cognizant of that. There's no way he's not aware of it. So I would expect Debo's role to expand the next few weeks. I would expect them to work in more short stuff to Debo the next few weeks. That offensive line is starting to let up a little bit of pressure. We saw Brock crack under it a little bit at Cleveland. I would expect teams to bring more pressure. That means more work for Debo. So I do think he's at a buy. I think this is the lowest value you'll get him for all season. And the Niners have a nice schedule moving forward. So I'd keep an eye on him. This one is one I'm actually really, really high on, and I was poking around in every league that I don't have him to see, and that's Jerome Ford. He was actually pretty productive the last 2 weeks. I think averaging 9.5 half PPR points a game, playing with backup quarterbacks in low-scoring games. The Browns' defense is the best defense in 53 years in the NFL in terms of yards allowed per game, in terms of red zone efficiency, all sorts of crazy stats. They are absolutely one of the best defenses I've ever seen. So what you can expect going forward with the Browns, and their offensive line is very good. So what you can expect going forward with the Browns are run happy game scripts. Almost every single game script, their whole division, everything, run happy game scripts. And Jerome Ford had 17 or 18 touches in a very tough, grindy game against the Niners. You saw them bring out Kareem Hunt to start the game. You saw him give Kareem Hunt an increased workload. I think there are people that probably spent $50, $60 of fab on Jerome Ford expecting to get a one-for-one replacement of Nick Chubb. You actually have seen him have that level of production. He's had an 18 and a 22-point week, but he certainly dropped off since in those 3 weeks. He had a bye, and then he had two kind of average games. His schedule is super, super cush going into the end of the back half of the season here. This is someone I'm really, really high on trying to get in your roster. He had a couple chunk plays against the Niners. I think he looks really good. I think he's clearly their most talented back. And again, you're buying him at his low this season. I don't have anything specific as far as his price tag. I would just ask. I think running back's really thin this year, and I think someone might be willing to get rid of someone they really shouldn't. If he's going to get 16 to 20 touches moving forward, which I think his floor is probably 15 touches, maybe 11, 12 in a really weird game script, but really 15 to 20 I think is pretty average. If he's going to be getting that with that level of defense, I think that's a guy you want on your team for the playoff run. And then my last one is Mark Andrews. Bummed out about this because I did buy in on him pretty well this year. I thought that extra 20 pick discount from last year made him kind of appealing to me. Single digit fantasy scores in 3 of the last 5 games he's played. He didn't play the first game of the season, and the tight end market has really caught up to those premium guys. I was seeing Kelsey on a lot of sell lists this year for that reason. There's a chance his owner's disgruntled. There's also a chance that his owner went and got someone like Laporta off the waiver wire, and they're sitting on both of them, and might be willing to move one. I would still argue this is a premium fantasy asset. This is a guy with top 3 weekly upside at tight end, and not just top 3 weekly upside. He's their most talented pass catcher. He has 20 to 30 point per game upside, if not 12 to 15 when he has good games. That's a legitimate and a significant level of upside to have at tight end that just does not exist with a lot of your options. And again, I think this is someone who might be at his season low for value. Lamar's only going to get more comfortable in the offense. He's only going to get his reads down more. Mark Andrews actually dropped a touchdown pass too, last week, which didn't help. And I believe they missed him in the end zone. 2 weeks ago, he dropped a touchdown pass, and I believe last week they missed him in the end zone. So his numbers could look a lot different right now if the ball bounces a little bit differently. And also their running back production is really bad this year. Their running backs look barren. So I would expect them to utilize Mark a lot more going forward. I would be totally comfortable trading for him right now for the right price.
All right, my buys. First one is Jerry Jeudy. Now listen. I got some explaining to do. He's been very bad. Steve Smith called him a third-tier talent. So Jerry Jeudy has just been a clown show so far this year. Especially, it's really weird coming off of last year where it seemed like he finally emerged as the primary wide receiver on this team. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, the Broncos are shopping him and they're shopping Cortland Sutton. The 2 teams right now that have expressed interest in Jerry Jeudy are the Panthers and the Colts. And I would say that either of those spots is a better spot for him than where he is now. And you could probably get him for pennies on the dollar. If you drafted Jerry Jeudy, I have Jerry Jeudy in one league, and I went pretty wide receiver heavy, so I haven't been is frustrated with him since I haven't started him once this entire year. But especially for managers that drafted him really highly, I could see them being pissed at him, right? And you could probably get him for pennies on the dollar or even off of waivers. There's a lot of places where you could just see this guy on waivers, especially with all the negative attention that's kind of been around him. So yeah, at the trade deadline, he's being looked at as one of the premier guys that's available. So I think potentially a change of scenery might help him, and he could. He's talented. He's a great route runner, and he's definitely talented. It's just been his entire career has just been disappointing so far, and sometimes a change of scenery like that can be good for a player. So I would just poke around. I don't know, if you have maybe Roshan Johnson. or whatever, right? Like that's the level of player you could probably trade for Jerry Jeudy at this point. Chris Olave is the next one. He's produced all year for the most part. He had two stinkers. The game where Derek Carr's first game back from his AC joint sprain, and then the game where he pulled up with the toe, like in pregame warmups. He didn't get home really, but other than that, he's produced all year. Derek Carr should only be getting healthier, and as Derek Carr gets healthier and better, I can see Olave getting better with him. It right now a big concern about this Saints offense in general, and his quarterback, or that Derek Carr is one of the worst red zone quarterbacks of all time. Of all time. This goes back to his even his prime with the Raiders. He was always a guy, and I remember I said this years ago. I told Yanni because I think I don't know. You're talking about second quarterbacks you could draft, and I think you liked Derek Carr one year, and I was like, oh man, that guy hates throwing touchdowns. Derek Carr is the quintessential I'm going to throw for 350 yards, one touchdown, one pick, stat line. So I mean that you do have that. I would be shocked if Chris Olave scores more than 7 or 8 touchdowns this year. But he's getting home on his talent and just his targets and catches alone. So yeah, I think he's worth taking a look at. And if Derek Carr somehow figures out how to start throwing touchdowns to his receivers, watch out, because it's so clear with this Saints team that whenever Olave gets involved, they're so much better. They get Michael Thomas involved on little curls or slants or whatever, and he doesn't really move the needle like Olave does. So I would just take a look, see what you can get for him. And my last one is James Cook. He's let's just call it what it is. He's an important piece of an elite offense. I think that during I don't know, draft season and preseason, the rankings time period, I didn't really like James Cook just because of where he was being ranked. He was kind of in that running back dead zone, I guess you could say, or maybe even the upper end of that running back dead zone. I think he was going around guys like Aaron Jones, correct? It was Aaron Jones-ish area. The fourth round.
In PPR, he went a lot higher. In full PPR, yeah, he was going at the 4 or 5 turn.
Yeah.
Half PPR, it was 5th, 6th round.
So I didn't like him at that cost, just because he's never had more than 200 carries in a season in college or the NFL. So I thought that the bell cow prognostication for him and where he's being drafted was a little too high, but now I think that, especially with managers who drafted him high and might be frustrated with him, this could be a good chance to try and get him. I mean, he did get a goal line carry against Miami, which is important to note. That's been a big thing, and the big knock on James Cook is that he's an in between the 20s guy, where once they get down there into the red zone, they wanted to lean on Damian Harris, and Damian Harris was getting the goal line work for the most part. Mixing a little Latavius Murray too. But yeah, I mean, Damian Harris looks like he's gone for the year. I don't know. It seems like there's no way he would be back. And I don't think there's any way this team just keeps trotting out Latavius Murray on the goal line or Leonard Fournette. If they're serious about winning, a serious team does not feature Latavius Murray. A serious team does not give Latavius Murray more than 10 carries a game. Even 5 is pushing it for that guy. He's way too old. It stinks. And James Cook is the much better player. So yeah, I think he's a decent buy low. See what you can get for him, or see what you can offer to get him on your team. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us this week. A little short one, that's okay. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And what's going to be our question for the comments today, Yanni? I did the last one.
It's only going to be, the waivers go out an hour after this. Don't worry about it. Just save it for the next video.
Let us know in the comments whether or not your waivers process on Wednesday or Thursday. Sure. That's a good one. All right. Take it easy, guys, and we will catch you on Thursday morning for the head coach episode.